On a cold December night, a little girl in a torn Christmas dress was laughed at in the town square. One man heard it and stopped. He thought he was saving a child. He was wrong. She was about to save him instead. Cold rain fell like broken glass over Marion Square, rare and wrong for Charleston. Christmas lights trembled along iron balconies, their warm glow fighting a losing battle against the damp winter dusk. Near the fountain, a little girl stood alone. Her name was Lark Rowan. She was 8 years old, thin as a whisper, wrapped in a torn red Christmas dress that had once belonged to someone who loved her more than the world. The hem was uneven. One side had been stitched back together with clumsy white thread, the kind of repair done by tired hands late at night. She clutched a faded canvas tote to her chest, like it was armor. A group of children passed. Clean coats, new boots, loud laughter. One boy slowed smirk, curling his mouth. "Looks like Christmas threw up on you." The others burst out laughing, fingers pointed, phones lifted. Lark didn't cry. She didn't run. She bit the inside of her lip until she tasted metal and stared past them, eyes fixed on the fountain like she could disappear into the sound of water. Her shoulders tightened, chin lifting just enough to say, "I will not break for you." Across the square, a man stopped walking. Callahan Cal Ashford, 38, owner of half the historic properties surrounding the park, stood frozen beneath a flickering lamppost. He had just stepped away from his own gala, his name on the banner, his money funding the celebration, when the laughter cut through him. Not playful, cruel. Something old and unwanted stirred in his chest. Cal turned toward the sound. He saw the girl in the ruined dress. He saw the way she stood too still, like a child who had learned that movement invited pain. And for the first time in years, the world narrowed to a single moment. A laugh, a child, and a choice. Inside Ashford House Hotel, champagne glasses clinked beneath crystal chandeliers. Applause rolled through the ballroom in polite waves. Someone was thanking Callahan Ashford for his generosity, his vision, his leadership. Cal wasn't listening. He stood near the tall windows, navy suit, flawless tie already loosened, without him remembering when he'd done it. His reflection stared back from the glass, sharp jaw, calm eyes, a man perfectly assembled for public approval, and completely hollow. The gala was his. The scholarship fund bore his name. Every smile in the room depended in some way on his money. Yet none of it touched him. It slid past like rain on polished stone. His assistant had asked earlier if he wanted to say a few words. Something warm, she'd suggested. Something hopeful. Cal had declined. Now, as laughter rose again behind him, something in his chest twisted. Not the soft laughter of celebration, but sharp, mocking wrong. The sound leaked in through the cracked door when a server slipped outside. Cal stepped away from the crowd. He exited through a side door, the warmth evaporating instantly as cold air slapped his face. His shoes echoed softly on wet stone as he crossed back into the square. Charleston wasn't supposed to feel like this. Not in December. But tonight the city felt brittle, unfamiliar. He heard it again. Children's laughter, ugly this time. Cal followed the sound without thinking. Wealth, power, reputation, none of it mattered in that moment. He wasn't a CEO or a benefactor or a name on a plaque. He was just a man moving towards something that felt unfinished. When he reached the fountain, he saw them scatter. And at the center of the space they left behind stood a little girl in a torn red dress, clutching a bag like it was the last solid thing in the world. Cal slowed. For reasons he didn't yet understand, he knew this was not charity. This was reckoning. The children disappeared the moment Cal Ashford stepped forward. No shouting, no threats, just his presence, quiet, steady, undeniable. Kids knew instinctively when an adult meant trouble, and this man looked like the kind who didn't need to raise his voice. Now it was just the two of them. The girl stared at the ground. Her shoes were worn, thin toes scuffed pale. One lace was knotted where it had snapped. Cal stopped a few feet away. Then deliberately he lowered himself, not crouching to dominate, not looming. He bent until they were eye level. "Hey," he said softly. His voice surprised even him. "You okay, Silence?" Her fingers tightened around the tote strap until her knuckles went white. Finally, she nodded once. "I'm fine." The lie was neat, practiced. Cal swallowed. He searched for something, anything that wouldn't sound like pity. "That dress," he said carefully. "It's nice." Her eyes flicked up sharp and blue, assessing him like a sketch not yet trusted. "It was my mom's," she said. "My Nana fixed it so I could wear it today." Something shifted in his chest. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lark." A pause. "Lark Rowan." The name hit him like cold water. Rowan. Cal's breath caught before he could stop it. He repeated it quieter this time. Rowan Lark nodded. "My mom was Seren Rowan. She used to paint by the river." Her voice dipped. "Before she got sick." The square seemed to tilt. Seren. Cal straightened slowly, the past crashing in without permission, paint-stained hands, laughter on a balcony, a woman who believed beauty could survive anything. He managed one word. "I'm Cal." She studied him, then offered a polite nod. "Nice to meet you, mister." And just like that, she turned and walked away, red dress fluttering behind her, like a memory refusing to stay. Cal didn't follow. He stood there, rain soaking through his coat, knowing with terrifying certainty. This was not the end. Cal Ashford stayed where he was, long after the girl vanished into the dimming square. Rain pooled in the seams of the cobblestones. The fountain hissed and murmured like it was trying to speak. Inside the hotel behind him, music swelled, bright, cheerful fake. He didn't turn back. He stared at the wet path where Lark Rowan had walked, as if the stones might hold on to her footprints. Rowan. His mind kept repeating it, not as a name, but as a warning. Because it wasn't just a coincidence. Not in a city this old, in a square that always seemed to remember what people tried to bury. Cal had learned to trust patterns. Patterns built empires. He forced himself to breathe and replayed what she'd said. "It was my mom's. Nana fixed it." His throat tightened at the word Nana. Not because it was sweet. Because it sounded like survival, like a child who had learned her world was held together by one tired woman and a spool of cheap thread. Cal's phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from his assistant. "Sir, the donors are asking where you went." He didn't answer. Instead, he walked slowly, carefully down the square, toward the little storefronts where tourists still wandered. Hands wrapped around warm cups, laughing in a way that never had to worry about tomorrow. Near the edge of the park, he saw a flash of red. Lark was under the awning of a closed gift shop, pressing the tote against her chest. The rain had darkened the fabric of her dress, making the white stitches stand out even more like scars that refused to hide. Cal stopped a few feet away, not wanting to spook her. "Hey," he said again. "I didn't mean to." He paused. The apology felt too small to fit the moment. Lark looked at him, eyes narrowed slightly, like she was deciding whether he was real or just another adult who would disappear. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. The directness startled him. 8 years old, and already exhausted by pretending. Cal swallowed. "I want to make sure you're safe." Lark didn't laugh at him. She didn't thank him. She simply shifted her tote and said, "I'm safe enough." "Where's your Nana?" "At work," she answered. "She works nights, sleeps in the morning, then comes back." The rhythm of her voice made it sound like a schedule carved into her bones. Cal's eyes dropped to her shoes, thin soles, damp laces. He caught the smallest hitch in her left step as she adjusted her stance. "You're hurt," he said. "I'm fine," she repeated, sharper this time. He nodded slowly, respecting the boundary even as it tore at him. "Your mom, Seren." What kind of paintings did she do? Lark's grip tightened. Skies, she said after a beat. She said, if you paint enough skies, even the bad days can't win. Cal's vision blurred. That sentence had lived in his memory for 15 years. Only one person had ever said it to him, and she was supposed to be gone. Cal's voice came out as a whisper. Lark. What was your mom's full name? Lark blinked. Elise Rowan. The middle name struck like a hammer. Cal took one step back like the truth had suddenly become physical. Because Elise Rowan wasn't just a story. She was a ghost from the life he'd abandoned. And the little girl in front of him, in a torn Christmas dress and a stitched-up hem, looked like the past had come back to collect what was owed. The next morning, Charleston woke under a gray sky that couldn't decide if it wanted to rain or forgive. Cal didn't sleep. He lay on silk sheets in a house that felt like a museum, glass walls, perfect art, perfect silence, and the only thing he could see when he closed his eyes was a little girl biting her lip so hard it bled. He told himself he was going to the East Bay property for a routine check. He lied. By late afternoon, he was parked near Marion Square watching people drift through the holiday market like they belonged. Cal sat in the back seat of his black sedan, with his hands folded, his tie still on, as if he could pretend he was here for business. Across the square under the wide iron awning of a cafe, Lark sat cross-legged on a low stone bench. Same tote, same quiet. Today her red dress was mostly hidden beneath an oversized tan hoodie, sleeves pushed past her wrists. Her hair was pulled into a loose braid that had begun unraveling at the nape. She was sketching with fierce concentration, tongue tucked between her teeth, like the world didn't exist outside the paper. People passed and dropped coins into her tote without meeting her eyes, like tossing guilt into a bag and walking away lighter. A florist in a blue apron stopped, smiled, and slid a muffin into Lark's hoodie pocket. "Don't forget to eat, baby girl," she said. Lark nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Then for a brief second, her pencil slowed. She pressed 2 fingers to her chest, lightly, thoughtfully, like she was checking for something only she could hear. Cal's stomach tightened. He stepped out of the car and crossed the square on foot. No entourage, no assistant, no camera-ready grin. Just a man walking toward a child who had somehow become the center of his oxygen. Lark noticed him before he reached the bench. "You came back?" she said, not accusing, not impressed. Just stating a fact. "Thought I'd see how business was going," Cal replied, forcing a small smile. She shrugged. "People buy more when it's not raining." Cal's gaze lowered to her drawing. It was Charleston's waterfront, but not as it was. The buildings were warmer, the water brighter, the sky almost golden. The world she drew looked like a place where people were kinder than they had any right to be. "You don't draw it how it really looks," he said. Lark didn't glance up. "I draw how I wish it felt." The sentence hit him harder than any headline ever had. Cal crouched beside the bench, careful not to invade her space. "Did your mom teach you that?" Lark hesitated, then nodded once. "Kind of. She said if you painted enough skies, even the bad days couldn't win." Cal's breath caught sharp, involuntary. He stared at her, and his mind flooded with Serene barefoot on a balcony, paint on her cheek, laughing like nothing could touch her. Serene saying those exact words to him while he was still a man capable of believing them. Lark's pencil stopped. She looked at him fully now, eyes too steady for 8 years old. "You knew her," she said. Cal didn't trust his voice. He nodded once. Lark studied him like an artist deciding whether to commit a line to paper. Then she said quietly, "People forget too fast." Cal swallowed. "Forget what?" Lark returned to shading the storefronts in soft orange. "The way things feel," she murmured, "before they break." And Cal realized with a sick clarity. This girl wasn't begging him for anything. She was simply telling the truth. They sat like that for a while, 2 people on opposite ends of the world, stitched together by a bench and a quiet kind of gravity. The cafe awning dripped steadily. The fountain behind them kept whispering. Somewhere a street musician played a slow, cracked version of Silent Night, the notes bending under the cold. Cal watched Lark's hands move, small fingers smudged with graphite, nails bitten. The sleeve of her hoodie frayed at the cuff. Every detail felt like proof of something he'd tried to ignore his entire life, that survival had a look. Lark finished the last line of her drawing and blew lightly across the paper to scatter eraser dust. Then she reached into her tote and pulled out a stack of postcards, hand-drawn little city scenes in bright crayon. She held one out without ceremony. $2, she said. Cal blinked. You're selling these? She tilted her head. How else do you think Nana buys groceries when her paycheck is late? The matter-of-factness was a gut punch. Cal pulled out his wallet but stopped himself from doing what rich men always did, overpaying to feel holy. He took the postcard gently and handed her a crisp bill. Keep the change, he said. Lark frowned. Nana says don't make people feel like they own you. Cal's chest tightened. She's right. He reached into his pocket and gave her the exact amount she asked for, then added one extra bill. For Coco, he said quietly. Not for you. For the cold. Lark stared at him for a long beat, then tucked the money into a small envelope inside her tote. Okay, she said finally. That's allowed. Cal let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He studied the postcard in his hands. It was Marion Square, only in her drawing. The lights looked warmer. The fountain looked brighter. The people looked softer, like a world that might be safe if you believed hard enough. Do you ever go to school? He asked gently. Lark shrugged. Sometimes. Nana tries. But if she gets called into an extra shift, I come here. It's better than the shelter. She said the last word quietly, like it was something that tasted bitter. Cal felt the ground shift under him. He wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but he knew questions could feel like interrogation, like another adult trying to collect pieces of her life. So instead, he asked the simplest one. What do you need? Lark didn't answer right away. Her eyes flicked to the bookstore window nearby, fogged from the inside. She watched other kids press their faces against the glass, pointing at colorful displays, warm and untouched by hunger. Then she looked back at Cal. I need Nana to sleep, she said softly. Like real sleep. Not sitting up on the couch with one eye open. Cal's throat tightened. He nodded once, slowly. He didn't promise anything out loud, but something inside him made a decision. Because this wasn't about money. It was about presence. And Cal Ashford, for the first time in a long time, felt the weight of what it meant to stay. Cal told himself he wasn't following her. He told himself a lot of things as he kept a careful distance behind Lark Rowan, letting the evening crowd thin between them. The square emptied into quieter streets, holiday lights giving way to cracked sidewalks and porches that sagged with age. The city changed tone here, less postcard, more truth. Lark walked with small, deliberate steps, the tote slung over one shoulder. Every few yards, she adjusted her stride. Not enough to complain. Just enough to endure. Cal noticed. She turned onto a narrow block lined with modest houses, each one wearing its own version of survival. One leaned left. Another had plywood patched where a window once shattered. The air smelled faintly of damp wood and old leaves. Lark stopped in front of a small gray house tucked between two overgrown lots. The porch railing sagged, but it was wrapped in dollar store tinsel, silver and green, catching the last of the light. A paper snowman was taped crookedly to the door, one corner peeling free. Warmth improvised. Cal slowed across the street, heart pounding like he was about to knock on his own past. The front door opened before he could decide anything. A woman stepped out, Mavis Rowan, 61, still in faded scrubs, hair pinned back tight, like she didn't trust it to behave. Exhaustion sat on her shoulders, heavy and familiar. She scanned the street instinctively, the way people do when they've learned the world isn't gentle. Inside Lark, she said, voice firm, "Shoes by the door." Lark obeyed, then paused, glancing back. Her eyes met Cal's across the street. Not fear, not surprise, recognition. She didn't wave, didn't smile. She simply looked at him like she was filing him away. You followed, but you didn't chase. Then she stepped inside. The door closed. Cal stood there in the cooling air, breath shallow, staring at the tinsel-wrapped railing. He hadn't meant to cross a line. He hadn't meant to see this part of her life. But now that he had, he knew walking away would be another kind of theft. Cal crossed the street and climbed the steps. He knocked, twice. Firm, respectful. Footsteps approached. The door opened, a crack chain still on. Mavis's eyes narrowed the moment she saw him. "You again," she said flatly. Cal nodded, hands visible at his sides. "Ma'am, I'm sorry to show up unannounced. I know who you are," she interrupted. "Charleston knows who you are." Her gaze was sharp, searching, like she was reading footnotes she never wanted to read. Cal met her eyes. "May I come in?" Silence stretched. Finally, she said, "She doesn't know everything. I wouldn't tell her," Cal replied quietly. "Not without you." Mavis studied him one more second. Then she unhooked the chain. "5 minutes," she said. "That's all you get." The door opened wider, and Cal Ashford stepped into a life that did not belong to him, but somehow felt devastatingly familiar. The house was small, but it breathed. A pine-scented candle flickered on a side table. An old radio hummed low jazz from the kitchen, the sound slightly warped, like it had been played too many times by hands that needed comfort more than clarity. The furniture didn't match: an olive couch, a scarred coffee table, a lamp with a crooked shade, but everything was clean, loved. Cal stepped inside and immediately noticed what wealth couldn't buy: presence. His eyes were drawn to the mantel above a faux fireplace. Family photos, Lark as a toddler missing 2 teeth in one. Lark with paint smudged across her cheek. Lark asleep on the couch with crayons spilled at her feet. And above them all, a framed painting of the Charleston riverfront at sunset. Cal stopped breathing. The brushstrokes were unmistakable, bold but tender. The sky layered in warm golds and bruised purples, water catching light like it was alive. "That's hers," Mavis said from behind him. Cal's voice came out rough, serene. Mavis nodded once, painted it when she was pregnant, said she wanted Lark to know the world could still be beautiful even if people weren't. Cal's throat tightened. He didn't trust himself to speak. "She never told me," he finally said. "She didn't want to," Mavis replied, moving past him toward the kitchen. "And when she got sick, she said it was too late to matter." There was no venom in her tone, just fatigue. Cal stared at the painting like it might accuse him. Before he could respond, small footsteps padded down the hall. Lark appeared in the doorway, hair loose, now wearing an oversized sweater and mismatched socks. She paused when she saw Cal, as if the hallway had suddenly grown longer. "You're here," she said. Not a question. "I am," Cal replied gently. Mavis gave Lark a look, "Your call," then disappeared into the kitchen. Lark walked in slowly and sat cross-legged on the couch, watching Cal like one of her drawings had stepped off the page. She held a folded piece of paper in one hand. "You want juice or something?" she asked politely. Cal smiled despite himself. "I'm okay." She nodded, then handed him the paper. Cal opened it carefully. It was a drawing: 3 stick figures on a bench under Christmas lights. One with a braid, one with gray hair, and one tall figure in a navy suit. Above the tall one was a question mark. "I don't know your last name," Lark said quietly. "But Nana said you used to know my mom." Cal looked up at her. "I did. She was really good at painting," Lark said. "I only remember some of it." Cal nodded. "She painted outside, even in the rain." Lark smiled faintly. She said rain made colors softer. Cal felt something crack open. He looked back at the drawing in his hands. For the first time in decades, Cal Ashford saw himself not as a man who owned buildings, but as a question a child hadn't answered yet. Mavis returned with a plate of sliced apples and crackers, setting it down between them without ceremony. She sat in the armchair across the room, eyes never leaving Cal. "She's got a strong heart," Mavis said quietly. Cal met her gaze. "She gets that from both of you." Mavis raised an eyebrow. "Don't start flattering me now. I'm immune." Lark giggled, the sound quick and bright like it surprised even her. The moment lingered, fragile, suspended, until Cal checked his watch and stood slowly. "I should go," he said. "Thank you for letting me in." Mavis crossed her arms. "She's already drawing you." Cal paused. So Mavis added, voice firm, "Make sure you're someone worth drawing." Outside, dusk had settled fully, the sky bruised purple and blue. Cal stepped off the porch and inhaled deeply, like he was leaving oxygen behind. As he walked toward his car, something fluttered against the windshield. A folded sheet of paper tucked under the wiper. Cal pulled it free. Another drawing. 3 figures again, this time closer together. The tall one still had a question mark, but smaller now, less certain. Above them in shaky block letters were 2 words, Christmas Wish. Cal stood there for a long time, the paper trembling in his hands. He slipped it into the inside pocket of his coat, right next to the postcard Lark had sold him earlier, and pressed his palm over it like he was keeping something alive. Behind him, the little gray house glowed softly through its windows. Inside, Lark watched from behind the curtain, just for a second, making sure he left the right way. Mavis stood behind her, arms crossed. "Don't get attached too fast," Mavis said. Lark didn't answer right away. "He didn't promise anything," she said finally. Mavis exhaled. "Good." Lark's eyes stayed on the street. "People who promise usually leave." Mavis rested a hand on her shoulder, grip gentle but grounding. "And people who stay don't usually announce it." Outside, Cal drove away slowly, the weight in his coat pocket heavier than paper should ever be. For the first time in his life, he didn't want to own what he'd found. He wanted to earn it. And he knew the hard part was only beginning. Cal Ashford returned to Marion Square earlier than usual the next morning, the sky still undecided, a thin mist clinging to the air. He told himself he was only passing through on the way to a site inspection. He lied again. Across the square, Lark sat on her usual bench, hoodie pulled tight, sketchbook balanced on her knees. She was drawing fast, today lines, bolder, pressure heavier. Something in her posture felt guarded. Cal slowed his steps. That's when he saw it. When Lark stood to stretch, her weight shifted unevenly. Just a fraction, a subtle favoring of her left leg. She adjusted quickly, like someone used to correcting herself before anyone noticed. Cal noticed. She caught him looking and immediately sat back down. "I'm fine," she said, before he'd opened his mouth. "I didn't ask," he replied gently, lowering himself to the opposite end of the bench. Silence stretched. The fountain murmured. A bus hissed at the curb. Lark kept drawing. "Nana taped my shoe again this morning," she said suddenly, eyes still on the page. "It comes loose when it rains." Cal's jaw tightened. "Does it hurt?" She shrugged. "Only when I walk." The way she said it so calmly, so acceptingly, made his chest ache. He looked down at her feet. The sole of her left shoe was peeling away, held together with silver duct tape that had already begun to fray. Water seeped in with every step. Cold followed. "You shouldn't be walking on that," he said. Lark glanced up, expression sharp. "Then who's gonna walk for me?" The question landed between them, heavy and unanswerable. Cal nodded slowly. Fair. He didn't push, didn't lecture. He'd learned quickly that Lark didn't respond to fixing, only to choosing. They sat there until the mist thinned and the square grew louder. When Cal stood to leave, Lark spoke again. "You don't have to keep coming," she said. Not defensive. Honest. Cal met her eyes. I know. She studied him like she was weighing something invisible. Then she said, okay. It wasn't permission, but it wasn't rejection either. As Cal walked away, he made a decision that felt dangerously small and impossibly big at the same time. He wouldn't change her world. He would start with her feet. That afternoon, Cal returned carrying a small white paper bag and a shoebox he hadn't meant to buy personally, but had. He'd gone to 6 stores before he found the right pair. Waterproof, cushioned, the exact size. He approached slowly, careful not to make it feel like an ambush. I brought cocoa, he said, holding up the bag. Lark eyed it, then nodded once. Okay. She took the cup with both hands, breathing in the steam like it mattered. Her eyes flicked to the box. What's that? Cal set it down gently on the bench between them. You don't have to take it. Lark didn't move. Then why bring it? Because choice matters, he said simply. She frowned. Nana says we don't take things we didn't earn. Cal nodded. Your Nana's smart. He waited. Let the silence work. Finally, Lark opened the box. Inside were navy sneakers with thick soles and soft lining. Practical, unflashy, perfect. She touched them like they might vanish. They're new, she whispered. Yes. She looked up, guarded. What do you want? Cal answered without hesitation. Nothing. Lark studied him, searching for the hook. Finding none, she slipped off her old shoes. Her socks were thin toes, reddened from cold. She slid the new sneakers on slowly. She stood, rocked back and forth. Her breath caught. They don't hurt. They shouldn't, Cal said. She nodded once. Thank you. Footsteps approached from the edge of the square. Mavis stopped short when she saw the shoes. Her eyes went from Lark's feet to Cal's face. She needed them, Cal said quietly. Mavis folded her arms. So do a lot of kids. I know. She stepped closer, voice low and dangerous. Don't give a child something you plan on taking away. Not kindness, not hope, and not shoes. Cal met her gaze. I'm not planning to go anywhere. Mavis held his stare. Neither were half the men in Seren's life. Cal didn't argue. Lark tugged Mavis's sleeve. He brought cocoa, too. Mavis exhaled, long and tired. Let's go, baby girl. As they walked away, Lark took careful, confident steps. Cal watched until they disappeared. The rule had been spoken. Now he had to live by it. The photo surfaced 2 days later. It wasn't dramatic. No scandal. Just a candid shot of Callahan Ashford, CEO and philanthropist, sitting on a stone bench in Marion Square beside a little girl with a sketchbook between them. They were both smiling. That was enough. Cal's phone rang before breakfast. Noelle Vance, head of PR. Someone tagged you, she said flatly. The story's picking up traction. It's not a story, Cal replied. It will be, Noelle said. Board members are asking questions. Donors are curious. A billionaire spending afternoons with a child, it invites speculation. She's 8, Cal said coldly. And she's not an accessory. I know, Noelle replied. But the internet doesn't. Cal ended the call and stared out the window of his glass-walled house, the city stretching beneath him like a map he'd once mastered. By noon, he'd called Dante Mercer. I need options, Cal said. Quiet ones. Custody, Dante asked. Guardianship, Cal corrected. Contingencies, school permissions, medical authority if needed. There was a pause. Is there a reason this is urgent? Yes, Cal said. I don't want the world making decisions for her. That evening, Cal returned to the square without cocoa, without gifts, just presence. Lark was there, drawing again. You look tired, she said. I am. She nodded. Nana says tired people mess up when they rush. Cal smiled faintly. Your Nana's right. Lark flipped her sketchbook around. She'd drawn 3 figures again. The question mark was still there, but smaller, now lighter. People are looking at you, she said quietly. Because of me. Cal felt the weight of it settle. They can look, he replied. They don't get to touch. Lark studied him for a long moment. Then she turned back to her drawing. That night, Cal lay awake, fully dressed, shoes still on, staring at the ceiling. The world had noticed. Now he had to decide. Would he protect her quietly, or would the fight come to his door? The drawing appeared on a Friday. Charleston was washed clean by overnight rain, the square smelling of wet stone and pine needles. Cal arrived without warning this time, no cocoa, no bag, just himself. He had learned that showing up empty-handed mattered more than arriving generous. Lark was already on the bench legs, tucked beneath her hoodie sleeves pushed up. She didn't look up when he approached. "You're late," she said. Cal checked his watch. "I didn't know we had a schedule." She shrugged. "I do." He smiled and sat beside her, leaving space between them. The fountain bubbled softly, like it was keeping a secret. For a few minutes, neither spoke. Then Lark flipped her sketchbook around. It was the same scene she'd drawn before the bench, the light's 3 figures. One small with a braid, one with gray hair, and one tall in a navy suit. But the question mark was gone. In its place, written in careful, uneven block letters, was a single word. Dad Cal felt the word land in his chest, like a dropped plate, sharp, shattering, impossible to ignore. He didn't touch the page. He didn't breathe. Lark watched him closely, not hopeful, not afraid, just observant. "You don't have to say anything," she said quietly. "It's just how it feels when you sit here." Cal's throat burned. "Lark," she held up a hand. "I know you're not my dad. Not like on paper. Nana says words can be bigger than facts." Cal finally exhaled, slow and shaky. "Your Nana's right." She nodded, satisfied. "I thought so." She turned the sketchbook back around and went back to coloring like she hadn't just rewritten his entire internal structure with 4 letters. Cal stared at the page until the wind flipped it closed. That night, he didn't go home. He walked the perimeter of Marion Square alone, hands in his pockets, replaying every moment. The way Lark didn't cling, the way she offered connection without demand, the way she left him room to choose. His phone buzzed. "Noelle Vance, board meeting," she said without preamble. "Monday morning. They want clarity." "About what?" "About your priorities." Cal looked at the bench where Lark usually sat. Empty now. "Tell them they already have it," he said. Noelle hesitated. This could get messy. Cal closed his eyes. So do hearts. He hung up and kept walking. Somewhere between the old oak and the flickering lamppost, Cal understood the truth he'd been circling for weeks. Lark hadn't asked him to be her father. She had asked him to be real. And that was the one role he could no longer walk away from. Monday morning, the boardroom felt colder than Marion Square ever had. Glass walls, polished table, men and women in tailored suits pretending this was just another meeting. Cal sat at the head-hands folded posture, calm. He looked exactly like the man they expected. That's what scared them. "We've had inquiries," the CFO began carefully. "Media donors. There's concern." Noelle stood by the screen, tablet in hand. A photo filled the display, Cal on the bench beside Lark, both mid-laugh. "You're becoming a narrative," Noelle said. "A billionaire and a child. People will fill in gaps whether you like it or not." Cal didn't look at the image. "She's not content. She's 8, another board member said. Perception matters." Cal leaned forward slightly. "So does harm." Silence. "If you're considering involvement beyond philanthropy," the CFO continued, "we need to discuss risk. Legal exposure, reputational stop," Cal said. The word cut clean. "I'm not adopting a storyline," he said evenly. "I'm protecting a child." Noelle softened her tone. "Cal, I understand. But this company exists because I built it," he replied. "And it will survive me making one human decision. The room held its breath. Finally, Cal stood. I won't use her image. I won't monetize her life. And I won't comment publicly. And if the press doesn't respect that someone asked. Cal's gaze hardened. Then we make it expensive not to. The meeting ended without applause. That afternoon, Cal skipped the car and walked to the square. Lark was there, of course. She always was. You look like you fought a dragon, she said. Cal sat beside her. Something like that. She studied his face. Did you win? Cal thought of the boardroom, the money, the fear dressed up as caution. I didn't lose, he said. She nodded. That counts. They sat quietly until footsteps approached. Mavis stopped short when she saw Cal, eyes sharp as ever. We need to talk, she said. Cal stood immediately. Of course. They walked a few steps away out of Lark's earshot. People are asking questions, Mavis said. At school. At work, I know, Cal replied. I'm handling it. Mavis crossed her arms. Handling isn't staying. Cal met her gaze. Then tell me how to stay right. Mavis searched his face long and hard. You don't buy her trust, she said. You earn it by being boring. Cal blinked. Boring, showing up, on time, again and again, even when nothing dramatic is happening. Cal nodded. I can do boring. Mavis studied him one more second. Tomorrow, she said, I'm updating her school file. Cal waited. I'll put you down as an emergency contact, Mavis continued. Not custody, not control, a seatbelt. Cal's chest tightened. Thank you. Mavis's voice dropped. Break that trust once and you're done? Cal didn't hesitate. Understood. Behind them, Lark pretended not to listen, pretended badly. Her pencil moved faster. The call came 3 days later. Cal was in his office reviewing contracts he no longer cared about when his phone vibrated across the desk. Unknown number. School code. He answered immediately. Mr. Ashford, a woman said. This is Palmetto Elementary. You're listed as an emergency contact for Lark Rowan. Cal stood so fast his chair tipped backward. What happened? She fainted in class, the nurse replied. She's awake now, but we'd like her evaluated. Cal didn't remember grabbing his keys. He didn't remember the drive. He only remembered the way his hands shook as he signed in at the front desk. Lark sat on the cot legs, dangling, cheeks pale but eyes steady. You came, she said. Cal crouched in front of her, relief flooding his chest so hard it hurt. Of course. The nurse explained dehydration, exhaustion, probably nothing serious but recommended follow-up. Mavis arrived 20 minutes later, breathless from work, eyes blazing with fear she tried to hide. She stopped when she saw Cal already there. You didn't have to, I wanted to, Cal said quietly. Mavis looked at Lark. You okay, baby girl? Lark nodded. I was just tired. Mavis exhaled, then turned to Cal. You answered. Yes, you didn't call PR. No, you didn't post anything. Never crossed my mind. Mavis held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded once. That night, as Cal walked back to his car, his phone buzzed again. A text from Lark. She had never texted him before. Lark, Nana says a seatbelt keeps you safe even if you don't crash. Cal, she's right. Lark, thanks for being one. Cal stared at the screen until his vision blurred. He typed slowly. Cal, I'll always pick up. Across the city, Lark curled up on the couch beside Mavis' sketchbook open on her lap. She drew a small picture. A bench. 3 figures. And this time written at the bottom in careful letters, seatbelts stay. For the first time since Seren died, Mavis allowed herself to believe something fragile and dangerous. Not hope, but continuity. And Cal Ashford, sitting alone in his silent house, finally understood this wasn't about becoming a hero. It was about becoming reliable. It happened on a Tuesday. Ordinary, unremarkable. The kind of day that never warns you before it splits your life in two. Cal Ashford sat at the head of a long conference table, glass walls reflecting charts and numbers that suddenly felt like a foreign language. Someone was explaining projections. Another voice chimed in with margins. Cal wasn't listening. His phone vibrated once. He ignored it. It vibrated again. Still nothing. The third time, something in the rhythm felt wrong, too close together, too urgent. He glanced down. Unknown caller. School code. Cal stood before anyone could object and stepped into the hallway. "This is Cal Ashford." The voice on the other end was calm but tight. "Mr. Ashford, this is Palmetto Elementary. I'm calling about Lark Rowan." The world narrowed. What happened? She collapsed during art class, the nurse said. She was unresponsive for several minutes. Paramedics are on site now. Cal didn't remember hanging up. He didn't remember telling the board he had to leave. He remembered the sound of his own pulse pounding in his ears as he tore off his tie and walked straight out of the building. Red lights blurred past his windshield. He didn't stop. He couldn't. At the school, yellow tape fluttered in the cold wind. A stretcher rolled past him. A small form beneath a silver blanket. "Lark," he whispered, already running. "She asked for you," a teacher said breathlessly. She said, "Call the seatbelt." Cal's chest cracked. The ambulance doors slammed shut. Sirens screamed. Cal followed in his car, hands white on the wheel, praying to a God he hadn't spoken to in years. At the hospital, fluorescent lights swallowed him whole. Mavis was already there, still in scrubs, face gray with fear she couldn't hide. "They don't know why," she said. "She just went down." Cal nodded, though nothing made sense. He had faced hostile takeovers, courtroom threats, billion-dollar risks. None of them compared to this, because this time there was no negotiation. Only a little girl on a gurney and the terrifying possibility that love might not be enough to keep her here. The pediatric wing smelled like antiseptic and fear. Machines beeped in steady and different rhythms as Cal and Mavis stood side by side outside a closed curtain. Neither spoke. Words felt fragile, like they might shatter something important. A doctor approached, Dr. Imani Suresh, calm eyes, efficient movements. "Are you family?" she asked. "Yes," Cal and Mavis said at the same time. The doctor nodded. "Lark is stable for now. But we've found something concerning." Cal's stomach dropped. "She has a congenital heart defect," Dr. Suresh continued. "A ventricular septal defect, a hole between the lower chambers of her heart." Mavis closed her eyes. "She's been compensating for years," the doctor said. "That's why the fatigue, the fainting, the limp, you may have noticed it wasn't just her shoes." Cal felt sick. "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means her heart has been working too hard for too long," Dr. Suresh replied. "She's in early-stage heart failure." The words echoed like gunshots. "She needs surgery," Mavis said. "Yes," the doctor confirmed. "Within the next 24 hours. Cal didn't hesitate. "Do it. I'll cover everything. Whatever it takes." Dr. Suresh met his gaze steadily. "With respect, Mr. Ashford, your money doesn't fix anatomy." Cal froze. "What she needs," the doctor continued, "is a skilled surgical team, and time we don't have much of." Mavis's hands trembled. "You can see her," Dr. Suresh said. "One at a time." Cal went in first. Lark lay impossibly small in the hospital bed, wires tracing her body like fragile threads. Her eyes fluttered open when he entered. "You came," she whispered. "Always," Cal said, voice breaking as he took her hand. "Did I mess up your meeting?" she asked weakly. He laughed, a quiet, broken sound. "Nothing matters more than you." She studied his face. "Is my heart broken?" Cal swallowed hard. "No, it just needs help." She nodded, satisfied. Then, barely audible, she said, "There's something. Nana has it." "What is it?" "A letter," Lark murmured. "From my mom. She said to give it to you, if you ever came back." Her eyes closed again. And Cal realized this wasn't just a medical emergency. It was a reckoning long overdue. In the waiting room, Mavis handed Cal a small envelope, yellowed, creased, his name written in a familiar slant, Callahan. Cal stared at it like it might burn him. "She wrote it when she got sick," Mavis said quietly. "Told me not to give it unless you showed up." Cal opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "If you're reading this, you found her." His vision blurred. "Don't come with money. Don't come with apologies. Come ready to stay." Cal exhaled sharply. "You didn't ruin me, Callahan. I loved you, and I forgave you long before I stopped breathing. But if you walk away from her, don't pretend it's kindness." He read every word like it was carved into bone. "She doesn't need another man who promises. She needs someone who proves it quietly daily without applause." At the bottom, one final line. "If you stay, don't save her with noise. Save her with presence." A nurse appeared at the doorway. "We're taking her in now." Cal folded the letter and pressed it to his chest like a vow. He stood as the gurney rolled past Lark, disappearing behind double doors marked "Authorized Personnel Only." Mavis grabbed his sleeve. "You don't have to stay." Cal shook his head. "I'm not going anywhere." For the first time, Mavis didn't argue. The doors closed. Cal sat alone, the letter heavy in his pocket, the sound of his heartbeat louder than the clock on the wall. For once, there was nothing he could buy, nothing he could command. Only one thing left to give: time, presence, and the promise unspoken but absolute that if Lark Rowan came back out of that room alive, he would spend the rest of his life making sure she never faced the world alone again. Morning came quietly. Sunlight slipped through the hospital windows like it didn't want to wake anyone. The machines around Lark's bed hummed steady now, no alarms, no urgency, just life continuing. Cal hadn't moved all night. When Lark finally stirred, her lashes fluttered breath shallow but calm. She opened her eyes and found him there exactly where he'd been. "You stayed," she whispered. Cal smiled, tears burning. "I told you I would." Later that afternoon, Dante Mercer arrived with a sealed envelope. No fanfare, no speeches, just paper and truth. He handed it to Cal and Mavis together. "Preliminary DNA results," Dante said quietly. 99.97%. Mavis read it first. Her hands shook, but she didn't sit down. Then she looked at Cal, not accusing, not relieved. "Blood doesn't make you a father," she said. Cal nodded. "I know. But it does give you the chance to be one," she continued. Cal didn't argue. He simply reached for Lark's hand when she woke again, letting her decide how much to hold. That evening, Dr. Suresh returned with good news. The surgery had been a success. The hole was closed. The strain was gone. Lark would heal. As night settled, Cal stepped into the hallway and made one last call. Temporary guardianship, he told Dante. Sealed. Quiet. With Mavis co-signing. No press. No statements. When Cal returned to the room, Lark was asleep again, a faint smile on her lips. For the first time, the future didn't feel like something to conquer. It felt like something to protect. The world tried to intrude. It always did. By morning, rumors were circling hospital staff whispers, a distant photographer spotted near the entrance, a blog headline drafted, but not yet published. Cal stopped it all before it could breathe. Dante filed quietly. Restraining orders. Sealed medical records. Temporary guardianship approved by a judge before noon. Every document had Mavis's signature beside Cal's. Not because she doubted him, but because Lark deserved 2 shields, not 1. Noelle Vance called once. Cal let it go to voicemail. The board requested a statement. Cal declined. In a conference room miles away, money argued with itself. In a hospital room, a child slept. That afternoon, Lark woke hungry. "I want apples," she said. Mavis laughed through tears and went to find some. Cal stayed helping Lark sit up slowly, carefully. "My heart feels Quiet, Lark said, pressing her palm to her chest. That's how it's supposed to feel, Cal replied. She studied him for a long moment. Are you still my seatbelt? Cal didn't hesitate. Always. When Mavis returned, she watched them together, no drama, no grand gestures. Just presence. She exhaled deeply like someone setting down a weight she'd carried too long. All right, she said softly. We'll figure this out. Day by day. Cal nodded. That's all I want. Outside, the city moved on, unaware it had just lost a story it didn't deserve to tell. Inside, something rare held steady. Safety. Lark came home a week later, not to sirens or headlines, but to quiet. Cal didn't bring her to a mansion full of echoing rooms. He brought her to mornings with light afternoons with crayons, evenings where dinner happened at the same time every day. Routine. Lark's drawings appeared on the refrigerator first, then the walls, then one framed carefully above the mantel. 3 figures. Me, Nana, Dad. No question mark. On their first evening back, Lark sat cross-legged on the couch, dog-eared sketchbook open. Cal sat nearby, not crowding her, not leaving either. Do you think it'll stay like this? She asked. Cal thought carefully. I think the world will try to shake us sometimes. She waited. But I'm not going anywhere. He finished. Lark smiled, not big, not loud. Certain. Weeks later, they visited Serene's grave together. Lark placed a drawing at the base of the stone, a little bench under lights, 3 figures holding hands. He stayed, she whispered. The wind moved gently through the trees like an answer. That night, back at home, Lark fell asleep on the couch with her head against Cal's side. Mavis watched from the doorway, arms crossed, eyes soft. You changed the locks on your heart, she said quietly. Cal nodded. She had the key the whole time. The house didn't feel large anymore. It felt full, because home wasn't walls or wealth or even blood. Home was a promise kept quietly daily without applause. And for the first time in his life, Cal Ashford was exactly where he belonged. Did this story move you? Share your thoughts in the comments and rate this story from 1 to 10. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell icon so you don't miss other heartwarming stories. Click on the last screen to see the next emotional chapter waiting for you. See you in the next story.